everybody talking about how not only did the New England Patriots beat the Buffalo Bills to announce loudly with trumpets blaring that they are back and they are looking like a legitimate Super Bowl contender, beat them 14-10 in Buffalo in crazy conditions, 55-mile-per-hour wind gusts, snow swirling at times, really cold out there. But they did it, Rob, by passing the football only 3 times.
2 completions, 3 passes, right.
I mean, you don't see that in high school football.
No.
I mean, not for the most part.
Even you could have the best running back in the state, and you still wouldn't, Chris, let people line up with 10 in the box and run the same, but just keep doing the same thing. That's the thing that's ridiculous, is that you got to keep normally you got to keep the defense honest. Like you line up and then you have somebody go out for a bomb, Chris, right? If you're running the ball that many times, the defense kind of comes up to the line and then you have somebody take off.
And you and I have talked about it when you say, well, because we remember we talked about how you rarely see like long breakaway runs anymore.
Right.
In the NFL, you used to see them a lot more. And we said, well, the reason you don't really see them anymore is because teams are so deep with their safeties and, you know what I mean? Like they're playing the pass. And so when you break
so there's
through
always
that
somebody
line of
out there,
scrimmage or even the second, tier of the linebackers, there's guys there to tackle you. And, of course, last night, Damian Harris had the long touchdown run. And the reason that, he was able to do it, I mean, it was a great run by him, 64 yards. But because, as you said, they had the box stacked. Everybody was up. Micah Hyde did misplay it, but still, there was no really second or third line of defense once he broke through the line of scrimmage and was free. So, to that point, Rob, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, two really, really good defensive backs for Buffalo. And Buffalo does have the best pass defense in the NFL.
But they
and
can't
those
stop
two are a
anybody.
huge part of it, right? Not against the run. But they were asked last night, Rob, if they are embarrassed, and that was the word that was used, if they are embarrassed at the way in which New England beat them by passing the ball only 3 times and they're running it down their throat, here's how they responded.
Bro, what kind of question is that? Criticizing you calling it. All right. I think we gave up 7 points.
Yeah,
14
to 10. Is that the final score?
We made stops when we had to. They had one big run. I mean, they got good backs. All right. They kept coming back to a couple runs. I mean, I don't know how you want us to answer that question.
That's funny. Well, we'll remember that. I'll remember that.
You already know. I wish I was in that press conference. I'm glad you do. When you guys don't make it to the AFC Championship game, you remember this. When they ran the balls down your throat. Hey, I work with a guy, the late Mike Weber. I don't know if you do you remember Mike Weber? Worked for the Newark Star Ledger. He covered the Nets for the Newark Star Ledger. Mike Weber he's deceased, I believe. He was a wrestler at Syracuse, Chris. So he had a barrel chest. He was, not a tall guy, but he was wide.
Right.
And this is when I was covering the Nets, and the Nets were terrible. And Mike Weber, watched the screen, would stick his notebook in the chest of the Nets players, like up close, like
would he actually be touching their chest?
Yes, I'm not even kidding you. And you know what he would say? You know me, the Nets were winning 17 games a year back then. He would go, embarrassed? Embarrassed? I swear. That's what he would say. Embarrassed? Embarrassed?
So how did they respond?
And, sometimes they would buy it. Sometimes they go, Mike, what do you want me to say? We scored 48 points or whatever it was. But my point is,
right.
I don't have a problem with the question. He didn't say you guys stunk up the joint. You guys are awful, whatever. Yes, it is embarrassing when they do the same They run the ball time and time and time, and you know it's happening, and you can't stop them. You lost. Whoa, you only gave up 14. No, but you only scored 10. No, you knew what was coming, and you couldn't get them, and you couldn't stop it. I don't care what they say. That question is in play for me.
Yeah, I'm with you, Rob. And what I didn't like was the way that they responded. And they weren't incredibly rude, Poyer and Hyde. But first, what are we doing here? That's what Hyde says. What are we doing here? Like that question is totally out of bounds. The Patriots did something that hasn't been done in 30 some odd years.
Right.
Win a game while passing only 3 times. They lined up more than 60% of the time. They had 6 offensive linemen telling you, we're running. All right? And you couldn't stop him. Yeah, that's embarrassing. And so I look, they're right. Poyer and Hyde are right, Rob. The defense, they only gave up 14 points.
Under normal circumstances, that's good enough.
Usually that is good enough. The offense didn't hold up its end of the bargain. Poyer's right. Other than the one run by Damian Harris, they did a pretty good job. New England racked up yards. They had 222 yards rushing. But they didn't give up a ton of points. And the offense was in the red zone twice in the last 8 minutes, Rob, and couldn't produce, couldn't score. And so they're right in that they weren't totally horrible by any stretch, the defense. But when Micah Hyde said, we'll remember that, and he wanted to say, keep that same energy, the only way that works, Rob, is if the guy that asked the question, and he wasn't, the guy that asked the question was a TV reporter from a local Buffalo station.
Okay.
But if he was part of the team, right? If he was
he was working for BuffaloBills.com.
Right. And
right?
Even then, I think those sites have a little bit of independence. But you know what I mean, right?
But if he works for the team, you're still getting paid by the team. Right?
And you just do a bunch of favorable articles, right? Point out all the positives on the team, and that's what you do. You talk to the players, you write some glowing features about them, right? And all that. That's the only way you can say to a reporter, dude, what? Are you serious?
Right.
I'm going to remember that. Dude, he doesn't work for the Bills.
Right.
His job isn't to kiss your butt. Act right. He was totally in bounds to ask that question because it was such a unique thing to happen.
And it could be.
And Rob, we had Randy Mueller, former GM, long-time NFL guy, and Ephraim Salaam, offensive lineman, both on the show. What did they both say? Demoralizing.
Yes. No doubt about it. And to say, was it embarrassing? He could have answered the question. You know what? I've never played in a football game where they did the same thing over and over and we couldn't figure it out. Yeah, I scratch my head. I can't believe we lost this game.
Right.
That's the story.
There's no doubt. You could have answered it I wouldn't say embarrassed. We gave forth a good effort. They only scored 14 points.
But it was frustrating that we couldn't cut off the run.
Right, exactly. To act like the dude was just coming out of left field with some "how dare you" question, it's just off. It just is. And I don't think Poyer and Hyde, and some people, Rob, have taken issue with the question because he used the word embarrassing. But I think you just answered that with your example of the guy. What was his name? Mike
Weber. Right, yeah, Mike Weber. He used to ask the Nets all the time. I'm sitting here. I used to be in the scrum, Chris, and he used to take his notebook, stick it in their chest to Roy Hinson or Joe Barry Carroll or John Bagley or Lester Connor and be like, embarrassed? That's the only thing he's saying. Chris, it was classic. It was Mike Weber, big barrel chest. Embarrassed? Embarrassed?
And I know, Rob, I can't think of an instance, but I'm sure there's no doubt in my years of covering the NBA, I'm sure I asked the coach and players at times, were you guys embarrassed by that effort or that outcome or whatever? I'm sure at some point I did. I mean, I covered the Knicks. If I remember correctly, they lost by 40-something on Martin Luther King Day, I think. And also, Rob, it's not unusual for a coach to come out and say, that was embarrassing. We should be embarrassed by our effort, right? Something like that. So don't act like the dude, just totally, insulted.
That was like the playoffs. Like remember
he might as well have said embarrassed.
Right. Could you still make the playoffs? Like playoffs.
like what?
Where's that, Alex?
Serious?
Playoffs? Are you kidding me?